Lillian Parker sat in her wheelchair at the altar, wearing a $20,000 wedding dress, while 300 guests watched her fiancé walk away. But it was the janitor cleaning the church who did something nobody expected. Something that changed everything. Kevin Thompson didn't see a disabled bride. He saw a woman who deserved better, and he was about to prove it. If you want to know how a single dad janitor showed a millionaire bride what real love looks like, hit that subscribe button. This story will restore your faith in humanity. Lillian Parker was 29 years old, worth $40 million, and had been in a wheelchair for 8 years. Ever since the car accident that killed her parents and shattered her spine. Ever since the day that divided her life into before and after. Before she could walk, after she couldn't, before she was just Lillian, after she was Lillian in the wheelchair. The accident happened on her 21st birthday. They were driving home from her birthday dinner at the nicest restaurant in the city. Her father was telling jokes. Her mother was laughing. Lillian was in the back seat, scrolling through birthday messages on her phone, feeling loved and happy, and completely unaware that in 30 seconds her entire life would change forever. The drunk driver ran a red light doing 70 miles an hour, hit them on the driver's side. The impact spun their car twice before it slammed into a telephone pole. Lillian's father died on impact. Her mother died in the ambulance. Lillian woke up 3 days later in the ICU with a crushed T12 vertebra and paralysis from the waist down. Complete, permanent, irreversible. The doctors used those words carefully, like they were worried she'd break if they said it too bluntly. But Lillian already knew. She'd tried to move her toes while lying in that hospital bed and felt nothing, tried to shift her legs and they wouldn't respond. Her brain was sending signals her body couldn't receive anymore. The neurosurgeon explained the injury in clinical terms. T12 complete spinal cord injury, paraplegia. They showed her diagrams of her spine, pointing to the crushed vertebra that had severed the connection between her brain and her lower body. They talked about physical therapy, wheelchair options, home modifications. They used phrases like adapting to your new normal and many people with paraplegia live full lives. But Lillian wasn't listening to the words. She was watching her legs, perfectly normal-looking legs that would never work again. Legs that had walked her across graduation stages and dance floors and hiking trails. Legs that were now just weight she'd carry around forever. The worst part wasn't the physical pain. They had morphine for that. The worst part was watching her legs not respond and knowing they never would again. Knowing that every time she saw stairs or curbs or bathrooms without accessibility, she'd be reminded that the world wasn't built for her anymore. The physical therapy started 3 weeks after the accident. Lillian's therapist, a stern woman named Carol, didn't coddle her. You can feel sorry for yourself, or you can learn to transfer from bed to wheelchair. Your choice. But self-pity won't make your legs work. Lillian hated Carol at first, hated her bluntness, her refusal to treat Lillian like she was fragile, her insistence that Lillian's life wasn't over, just different. But Carol was right. Feeling sorry for herself didn't help, so Lillian learned to transfer, learned to navigate in a wheelchair, learned to ask for help when she needed it, and fight for independence when she didn't. She inherited everything: her parents' tech company, their mansion, their entire fortune. $40 million and a wheelchair, the universe's cruelest trade. The lawyers came to the hospital with papers to sign. Her father's business partner, Gerald, wanted to buy her out. Let someone who can actually run the company take over. You have enough money to live comfortably, no need to stress yourself. Translation: you're disabled now, so you're not capable of running a business. Lillian signed nothing, told Gerald she'd be at the next board meeting, in person, in her wheelchair, and if he had a problem with that, he could resign. She showed up to that meeting 6 months after the accident, rolled into the boardroom in her custom wheelchair, wearing her mother's favorite suit. Every board member stared. Gerald actually had the nerve to ask if she was sure she was ready to be back at work. "I'm paralyzed, not incompetent," Lillian said coldly. "My legs don't work. My brain does. Now let's discuss Q3 projections." She proved herself that year. And the next, and the next. Grew the company while learning to live in a world that wasn't designed for wheelchair users. Dealt with inaccessible buildings and people who talked to her like she was a child, and dates who said they admired her courage, as if living while disabled required bravery instead of just existing. Lillian spent the first year angry, furious at the drunk driver who got 5 years in prison, furious at the universe for taking her parents and her ability to walk in one night, furious at her body for betraying her. She went through 6 different therapists before finding one who didn't treat her like she was fragile. Dr. Martinez was the first person to tell Lillian the truth. You can be angry forever, or you can build a life. Both options suck, but one sucks slightly less. So Lillian built a life, learned to run her parents' company from a wheelchair, proved to the board members who wanted to push her out that being disabled didn't make her incompetent, grew the company's value by 30% in 5 years, made Forbes' 30 under 30 list, became the face of accessible technology and disability advocacy. She dated occasionally. Men who said they didn't care about the wheelchair. Men who made a big show of how progressive and accepting they were, how they saw past her disability, as if her wheelchair was something to see past instead of part of who she was. Most relationships lasted 3 months, 6 if the guy was really committed to pretending. Then came the excuses, the careful withdrawals, the "it's not you, it's me" conversations that meant, "I can't handle dating someone in a wheelchair and I'm too embarrassed to admit it." Then she met Marcus Wellington, 42 years old, investment banker, handsome in that polished, expensive way. He approached her at a charity gala, introduced himself, asked about her work, didn't mention the wheelchair for their entire first conversation. They dated for 2 years. Marcus was charming, attentive. He adapted his life to accommodate hers, chose accessible restaurants, made sure venues had wheelchair access, held her hand during physical therapy appointments, proposed in front of her friends at another charity gala with a 5-carat diamond ring. Lillian said yes because Marcus seemed perfect, because he treated her like she was whole, because after 8 years of being rejected for her disability, someone wanted to marry her, because she was 29 and scared of being alone forever. The wedding was planned for December, a massive ceremony at the Cathedral of Saints, the most beautiful church in the city. 300 guests, designer dress, live orchestra, everything perfect, everything planned to the last detail. The fairy tale wedding Lillian's mother had always dreamed of for her, except Lillian couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Marcus had been distant the last 2 months, spending more time at work, coming home late, avoiding conversations about the wedding, making excuses about being stressed about the merger his firm was handling. Lillian told herself it was normal. Everyone got cold feet. The wedding was in a week. Everything would be fine. It wasn't fine. Kevin Thompson was mopping the floor in the church basement when he heard crying. He'd been working as the church janitor for 3 years, ever since he needed a second job to support his daughter after his wife left. The work was steady, the hours were flexible. Father Martinez was understanding when Kevin needed time off for Sophie's school events. Kevin was 35 years old, exhausted and behind on his electric bill. But he had a 6-year-old daughter who depended on him, and that meant showing up. Always showing up, no matter how tired, no matter how broke, no matter how much he wanted to give up. His main job was firefighter, 36-hour shifts followed by 2 days off. It was good work, important work, work that mattered, but it didn't pay enough to cover rent and groceries and Sophie's school supplies and the medical bills from when she had pneumonia last winter. So Kevin cleaned the church on his days off, mopped floors, cleaned bathrooms, set up chairs for services, whatever Father Martinez needed. His marriage had ended 3 years ago when Sophie was 3. Laura, his high school sweetheart, the woman he thought he'd spend forever with, left a note on the kitchen table saying she couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't be a mother, couldn't handle the responsibility. She needed to find herself, needed to live her life before it was too late. Kevin came home from a 48-hour shift to find that note and Sophie crying in her crib. Laura had left their 3-year-old daughter alone in the apartment for 6 hours. 6 hours while she packed her things and drove away to find herself. Kevin never forgave her for that. Never forgave her for leaving Sophie, for abandoning their daughter like she was disposable. He filed for divorce, got full custody. Laura didn't contest it. She sent child support sometimes. Birthday cards rarely, showed up never. So Kevin became a single dad. Learned to do Sophie's hair, badly at first, better with practice. Learned to cook simple meals that a picky toddler would eat. Learned to function on 4 hours of sleep. Learned to be both parents because he was the only one who stayed. His mother helped when she could. Watched Sophie during Kevin's shifts. But she had her own health problems, and Kevin tried not to ask for too much. So he worked. Firefighter during the week. Janitor on his days off, barely scraping by, barely keeping his head above water. But Sophie had food and clothes and stability. That's what mattered. Kevin didn't date, didn't have time, didn't have energy, didn't have anything left to give after working 2 jobs and raising a daughter alone. His friends from the firehouse kept trying to set him up, kept saying he needed to put himself out there. But Kevin couldn't imagine trusting someone enough to let them near Sophie. Couldn't risk bringing someone into their lives who might leave, because that's what people did. They left. Laura proved that. Kevin's father proved that when he walked out when Kevin was 12. Love was a risk Kevin couldn't afford to take anymore. So he focused on Sophie, on showing up, on being the parent she deserved. He followed the sound of crying to the bride's preparation room. The door was slightly open. Kevin knocked gently. "Are you okay? Do you need me to get Father Martinez?" "Go away." The voice was female, young, devastated. Kevin should have walked away, respected her privacy, gone back to mopping floors. But something in that voice stopped him. The same thing that made him check on crying kids at Sophie's school. The instinct that said someone needed help. "I can leave, but I work here. If you need anything, water, tissues, someone to call, I can help." Silence. Then, "Can you help me not get married to a man who thinks I'm broken?" Kevin didn't know what to say to that. What? "Never mind. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Please leave." But Kevin found himself pushing the door open slightly, saw a young woman in a wheelchair, wearing the most elaborate wedding dress he'd ever seen. Her face was destroyed with tears, makeup running, hands shaking. "My name's Kevin. I'm the janitor here. Are you getting married today?" "Was getting married, past tense." The woman laughed bitterly. "The groom just told me he can't do it. Can't marry someone in a wheelchair. Apparently he thought he could handle it, but he can't. He used the word burden. I'm a burden. Those were his exact words." Kevin felt anger flash hot in his chest. "He said that to you? On your wedding day?" 30 minutes ago, in this room, while I was in my wedding dress. There are 300 people in the church waiting. My entire company is out there. My friends, his family, everyone." She wiped her eyes. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to tell them all that the wedding's off because my fiancé realized he doesn't actually want to marry a woman who can't walk. I'm sorry. That's awful. You don't have to stay. I'm sure you have floors to mop or whatever. I'll be fine. But Kevin didn't leave. He looked at this woman, this bride in the most expensive dress he'd ever seen, and saw someone who'd just had her heart shattered, someone who needed someone to stay. What's your name? Lillian. Lillian Parker. The name sounded familiar. Kevin had seen it in the business section of newspapers, some kind of tech CEO, but right now she wasn't a CEO. She was just a woman crying in a wedding dress. Lillian, I'm not good with words. I clean floors for a living. But that guy who walked away, he's an idiot. You don't know anything about me. I know you're sitting here in a wedding dress trying to figure out how to face 300 people with dignity after someone just destroyed you. That takes strength most people don't have. So yeah, he's an idiot for walking away from that. Lillian looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. Saw a man in a janitor's uniform, older than her, kind eyes, tired face. Someone who had no reason to be kind to her but was anyway. What am I supposed to do? Go out there and tell everyone the wedding's off? Explain that my fiancé changed his mind because he can't handle being married to someone disabled? Do you want me to tell them? What? I could go out there, make an announcement, say the wedding is cancelled. You wouldn't have to face them. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Kevin thought about Sophie, about how he'd want someone to help her if she was ever in pain like this. Because nobody should have to go through this alone. And because that guy out there, your ex-fiancé, he doesn't deserve to watch you break. Lillian started crying again. Thank you, but I should do it myself. I need to face them. Then I'll push your wheelchair. You focus on keeping your head up. I'll handle getting you there. And that's what they did. Kevin Thompson, church janitor in a worn uniform, pushed Lillian Parker, Millionaire CEO in a designer wedding dress, down the aisle of the Cathedral of Saints in front of 300 shocked guests. Lillian's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. The wedding is cancelled. Marcus and I have decided not to get married. I apologize for any inconvenience. Thank you all for coming. She didn't explain, didn't justify, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her humiliation. Just delivered the news with her head high while Kevin stood behind her wheelchair like a guard. The whispers started immediately. Where was Marcus? What happened? Why was the janitor pushing her instead of family? Lillian's assistant, Sarah, rushed forward. Lil, what happened? Are you okay? I need to leave. Now. Can you handle the guests? Of course, but I'll explain later. Please just get me out of here. Kevin pushed Lillian's wheelchair toward the side exit, away from the staring guests, away from the pity and curiosity and judgment. Sarah followed, making calls to arrange transportation. In the quiet of the side corridor, Lillian broke down completely. 8 years of holding herself together. 8 years of proving she was capable despite her disability. 8 years of dating men who claimed to accept her, but didn't. All of it came pouring out in a church hallway, while a janitor and her assistant tried to figure out what to do. I'm sorry, Lillian sobbed. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be falling apart in front of strangers. You just got abandoned at the altar, Kevin said quietly. You're allowed to fall apart. Sarah was on the phone arranging for Lillian's driver to bring the car around. 5 minutes. We'll get you home. You can change. Get away from all this. But Lillian just kept crying. He called me a burden. 8 years after the accident, and I'm still a burden to people. My parents died, and I got to live, but I'm a burden. You're not a burden, Kevin said. That guy was too small to see what he had. That's his failing, not yours. You don't know me. You can't know that. No, but I know courage when I see it. And walking down that aisle to cancel your own wedding in front of everyone who came to celebrate. That's courage. You're not a burden. You're stronger than most people will ever be. Sarah came back. Car's here. Let's get you out of this dress and home. Lillian nodded, wiped her eyes, looked at Kevin. Thank you for pushing me down that aisle, for staying. You didn't have to do any of that. Glad I could help. What's your name again? Kevin Thompson. Thank you, Kevin Thompson. I won't forget this. Kevin watched them leave, went back to mopping floors, tried not to think about the broken bride in the designer dress, tried to focus on finishing his shift so he could pick up Sophie from her grandmother's house. But he couldn't stop thinking about what that man had said to Lillian. Burden. Like loving someone required them to be perfect. Like marriage was only for people without challenges. Kevin had been married. His wife Laura had left when Sophie was 3 because she couldn't handle being a mother, couldn't handle the responsibility, said she needed to find herself. Kevin knew what it felt like to be abandoned, to be told you were too much, to watch someone you loved walk away. He hoped Lillian would be okay. Then he finished mopping and went home. 3 days later, Kevin was cleaning the church offices when Father Martinez called him in. Kevin, I have an unusual request. Do you remember the wedding that was cancelled on Saturday? Yes, Father. The bride, Ms. Parker, called. She wants to thank you personally. Asked if I could give her your phone number. I told her I'd ask you first. Kevin was surprised. She wants to thank me? I just pushed her wheelchair. Apparently it meant a great deal to her. I can give her your number if you're comfortable with that. Kevin thought about it. Sure, that's fine. 2 hours later his phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Kevin Thompson. This is Lillian Parker, from the wedding, the one that didn't happen. Hi, I remember. How are you doing? Better, worse, I don't know. Lillian's voice was different than in the church, stronger, more controlled. I'm calling because I wanted to thank you properly. What you did, staying with me, helping me face everyone, that was incredibly kind. And I'd like to repay you somehow. You don't need to repay me. I was just helping. I insist. Please, can I take you to dinner or coffee, something to properly thank you? Kevin hesitated. I have a daughter, 6 years old. Finding babysitters is... Bring her. I'd love to meet her. There's a family restaurant near the church. Tomorrow at 6. Kevin should have said no. Should have kept boundaries between his life and this millionaire CEO's life. But something made him say yes. The next evening, Kevin and Sophie arrived at the restaurant. Lillian was already there, sitting at a table near the window. She'd chosen a booth accessible for her wheelchair. She was dressed casually, jeans and a sweater, looking nothing like the bride in the elaborate dress. Kevin, thank you for coming. She looked at Sophie. And you must be Sophie. I'm Lillian. Sophie, who'd never learned appropriate shyness, immediately asked, Why are you in a wheelchair? Sophie, Kevin was mortified. I'm sorry. But Lillian was smiling. It's okay. I was in a car accident a long time ago. It hurt my back and now my legs don't work, so I use a wheelchair to get around. Does it hurt? Sometimes, but mostly I'm used to it. My friend Jake at school has a wheelchair too. He's really fast. He beats everyone at tag. Jake sounds awesome. Maybe I should challenge him to a race. Sophie giggled. They ordered dinner. Kevin tried to pay, but Lillian insisted. They talked about everything and nothing. Sophie dominated the conversation, telling Lillian about school and her favorite books, and how her daddy made the best pancakes, even though they were always a little burned. Kevin watched Lillian with his daughter, saw how she talked to Sophie like she was a person, not a kid to talk down to, how she asked real questions and listened to the answers, how Sophie was completely comfortable around her within minutes. After dinner, while Sophie was coloring on the kids' menu, Lillian looked at Kevin seriously. "I have a question. It might be weird. You can absolutely say no." "Okay." "My company is launching a new accessibility initiative. We're developing adaptive technology for people with disabilities. But my team is mostly able-bodied. They mean well, but they don't always understand the real challenges." Lillian paused. "I need someone on my team who gets it, who understands what regular people face, not just what executives think they face. Would you consider consulting for us?" Kevin laughed. "I'm a janitor. I don't know anything about tech." "But you understand people. You saw someone hurting and helped without thinking about it. That's the perspective I need, and I'd pay you well." "Very well. Why me?" "Because in my worst moment you showed up, didn't ask questions, didn't treat me like I was fragile, just helped. I could use someone like that in my life, in my company." Kevin thought about his electric bill, about Sophie's upcoming birthday, about how he'd been working 2 jobs just to stay afloat. "How much?" Lillian named a figure that was more than Kevin made in 6 months. That's too much. It's market rate for consultants. Actually, it's below market rate. You'd be meeting with my team once a week, providing feedback on our designs, sharing your perspective. 4 hours a week. 4 hours a week for that much money? Your perspective is valuable, Kevin. Let me pay you what it's worth." Kevin looked at Sophie, happily coloring, thought about what that money could mean, paying off debt, Sophie's education fund, maybe even cutting back to 1 job. "Okay, I'll try it." Lillian smiled. "Great. Can you start next week?" That's how Kevin Thompson, church janitor, became a consultant for Parker Technologies. He'd show up to the gleaming office building once a week in his nicest clothes, which still looked shabby compared to everyone else, and sit in meetings with engineers and designers. At first, they were skeptical. The janitor Lillian hired to consult on accessibility, but Kevin's perspective was invaluable. He'd point out design flaws nobody else saw, ask questions about real-world usage that engineers hadn't considered, push back when designs looked good on paper but wouldn't work in practice. The first meeting was awkward. Kevin sat at a conference table with 6 engineers, all of them with advanced degrees and expensive suits. They presented a new app designed to help people with mobility issues navigate public transportation. "What do you think?" the lead designer asked, clearly expecting praise. Kevin studied the interface, clicked through the screens. "Who tested this?" "We had a focus group, 8 participants with various mobility challenges." "Did any of them use wheelchairs?" "2 of them, yes." "Did they actually try to use this app while getting on a bus? Because I'm looking at this and thinking, there's no way someone in a wheelchair could navigate through all these menus while also maneuvering onto a bus ramp. You've got 6 steps just to report an accessibility issue. By the time they finish reporting it, the bus is gone." The designer looked defensive. "We needed to collect detailed information. Make it 1 button, big button that says report problem. Opens the camera. Person takes a photo. App automatically logs location and time. Done. They can add details later if they want, but give them the fast option because accessibility issues are time-sensitive." Silence around the table. Then one of the engineers said, "That's actually brilliant. Why didn't we think of that?" "Because you're not trying to get on a bus in a wheelchair while carrying groceries and hoping the ramp works. You're designing in an office. I'm telling you what actually happens in real life." Lillian was smiling. "This is why I hired Kevin. Continue." Over the next hour, Kevin tore apart their carefully designed app. Too many menus, too much text, buttons too small, color contrast too low, navigation too complicated. The designers looked devastated by the time he finished, but then he said, "The core idea is good. You're trying to help people. You just got lost in making it perfect instead of making it useful. Simplify everything. Make it so simple my friend Jerry's grandmother could use it. Then you'll have something that actually works. The engineers spent the next month redesigning based on Kevin's feedback. The next version was better, simpler, more intuitive. Kevin tested it with people from his neighborhood, got real feedback. The designers incorporated it. When the app launched 3 months later, it won awards for accessibility design. Articles were written about Parker Technology's commitment to inclusive design. Lillian was interviewed about how they developed it. She gave Kevin full credit. We hired a consultant who understood that good design isn't about looking pretty, it's about working for the people who need it most. That perspective changed everything. Kevin became a fixture at Parker Technologies. The engineers started calling him before finalizing designs, started asking what he thought about features, started including accessibility from the beginning instead of treating it as an afterthought. "This app is beautiful," Kevin said during one meeting 6 months later, looking at a new screen reader design. "But my friend Jerry is blind and he's 65. He's not going to navigate through 6 menus to change settings. Make it simpler." The engineers didn't push back anymore. They just nodded and simplified it. Lillian backed him every time. Listen to Kevin. He's right. Over the months, Kevin earned the team's respect. They started asking his opinion before finalizing designs, started thinking about accessibility from the beginning instead of adding it later. The products got better because Kevin made them better, and Kevin started to believe that maybe he had something valuable to offer. Maybe being a janitor who understood real people's problems was actually an asset. Maybe his perspective mattered. And somewhere in those months, Kevin and Lillian became friends, real friends, not boss and consultant, not millionaire and janitor, just 2 single parents trying to build good lives for their kids. Lillian would ask about Sophie. Kevin would ask about Lillian's company. They'd share stories about the challenges of parenting alone. Lillian had no kids, but she understood isolation, understood what it felt like to have people leave because you were too much trouble. 6 months after the cancelled wedding, Lillian invited Kevin and Sophie to her house for Sophie's 7th birthday. The mansion was incredible, but Sophie only cared about the pool and the trampoline in the backyard. Kevin stood in Lillian's kitchen drinking expensive wine and feeling completely out of place. The kitchen alone was bigger than his apartment. Marble countertops, professional-grade appliances, a wine fridge that probably cost more than his car. He didn't belong here. A firefighter janitor in a mansion drinking wine that probably cost $100 a bottle. "You okay?" Lillian asked, rolling over in her wheelchair. "Your house is bigger than my entire apartment building." "Technically, it's my parents' house. I just live here. Most of it feels empty." Lillian gestured at the vast space around them. 8 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a library nobody reads in, a dining room that seats 20 people, and I eat alone in the kitchen most nights. It's a museum, not a home. "Why do you stay?" "Because my parents love this house, because leaving feels like abandoning them, because I don't know where else I'd go." She paused. "And because when you grow up with money, you don't think about whether you need a house this big. You just live in it. You're lonely." It wasn't a question. Lillian looked at him, really looked at him. "Yeah, I am. Turns out having money doesn't mean having people who actually care. Most people who call themselves my friends are networking contacts, people who want something, business connections, access to my company." Marcus wanted a trophy wife with a good reputation who'd make him look progressive for marrying someone disabled. Nobody just wants Lillian. "Sophie and I care." "I know. That's why I invited you. You're real, Kevin. You don't want anything from me except friendship. Do you know how rare that is? You've seen me cry, seen me angry, seen me struggling, and you still show up." "I want your consulting fee," Kevin joked, trying to lighten the mood. "That's business. I'm talking about personal. You show up to these dinners because you like me, not because I'm Lillian Parker, CEO. Just Lillian, the woman who can't walk, the woman who got left at the altar, the woman who eats takeout alone most nights in a mansion built for a family she'll never have. The raw pain in her voice hit Kevin hard. You don't know that. I'm 29 years old, in a wheelchair. The men who date me either fetishize my disability or treat me like I'm fragile. Marcus was the first one who seemed normal about it, and he still couldn't handle it in the end. What are the odds I'll find someone who actually wants this? She gestured at her wheelchair. Who wants the complications? The accessibility requirements? The stairs when we go out? The reality that I'll never walk down a beach or climb stairs to a romantic restaurant or dance at my own wedding? Kevin set down his wine glass. For what it's worth, I think the guy who walked away from you was an idiot. You said that before, in the church. Still true. You're brilliant, funny, kind. Any man would be lucky to have you. Any man except all the ones who've left. Then they were idiots too. Kevin moved closer. Lillian, I know we haven't known each other that long, but I've seen enough to know you're not the problem. The wheelchair isn't the problem. Small people are the problem. People who can't see past their own limited idea of what life should look like. You deserve someone who sees all of you, wheelchair included, and thinks they won the lottery. Lillian smiled. You're good for my ego. I'm serious. Disability doesn't make you less worthy of love. It just weeds out the shallow people faster, and yeah, that sucks. But would you really want to be with someone who sees you as a burden? Someone who can't handle the reality of who you are? You deserve better than that. When did a janitor become so wise? When his wife left him to raise a daughter alone, and he had to figure out what actually mattered. Spoiler. It's not walking. It's showing up. Being present. Loving people even when it's hard. You do all of that despite your wheelchair, not because of it. You show up for your employees, for your company, for the disability community. You're making actual change in the world. That's worth more than being able to walk. Lillian's eyes were bright with tears. Thank you. I needed to hear that. Most people just tell me I'm inspiring. Like existing while disabled is some kind of heroic achievement. You're the first person who's treated me like I'm just a person who happens to use a wheelchair but who's also more than that. You are more than that. You're a CEO who's brilliant at business, a friend who makes Sophie laugh, a woman who's rebuilding her life after tragedy. The wheelchair is part of your story, but it's not the whole story. They stood there in her massive kitchen, comfortable silence between them. Sophie ran in demanding cake, her hair dripping from the pool. The moment passed, but something had shifted. Kevin felt something stirring in his chest, something he hadn't felt since Laura left, something that scared him because it felt like the beginning of feelings he couldn't afford to have. Lillian was his boss, his friend, out of his league in every possible way. He couldn't develop feelings for her. But watching her laugh as Sophie demanded chocolate cake with extra frosting, Kevin realized it might be too late. Over the next year, Kevin and Lillian became inseparable. He was at her house 3 times a week. She came to Sophie's school events. They'd have dinner as families, Kevin, Sophie and Lillian, like they were a unit. Kevin's friends noticed. His mother noticed. Everyone kept asking if they were dating. No, Kevin would say. We're just friends. But the truth was more complicated. Kevin had feelings for Lillian, had for months. But he didn't know how to tell her, didn't know if she felt the same, didn't want to ruin their friendship by making it weird. And Lillian, brilliant, confident Lillian, was terrified. Terrified of loving someone who might leave. Terrified of being vulnerable after Marcus. Terrified that Kevin was only kind to her out of pity. The breaking point came 18 months after the cancelled wedding. Sophie, now almost 8, asked the question Kevin had been avoiding. Daddy, do you love Lillian? Kevin was making dinner. Burned the pasta he was stirring. What? Do you love her, like how princes love princesses? Sophie, because I think you do. You smile different when she's around, and you talk about her all the time, and you get sad when she's sad. Kevin sat down, looked at his too perceptive daughter. Thought about lying, thought about deflecting, but Sophie deserved honesty. Yeah, sweetheart, I think I do love her. Then why don't you tell her? It's complicated. Why? Kevin tried to find words a 7-year-old would understand. Because what if she doesn't feel the same way? What if telling her ruins our friendship? Lillian is important to us. She's our friend. If I tell her I love her and she doesn't love me back, it might make things weird. We might lose her. But what if she does love you and she's waiting for you to say it first? Out of the mouths of babes. That's possible, I guess. She looks at you the same way you look at her, like she's happy you're there. Ms. Johnson at school says that's how people look when they're in love. Kevin smiled despite himself. Ms. Johnson is teaching you about love in 2nd grade? No, she was talking to Mr. Peterson, the music teacher. But I heard her. Sophie climbed onto Kevin's lap, a rare occurrence now that she was getting older. I want Lillian to be part of our family, for real. Not just visits and dinners. I want her to live here, or us to live there. I want her to be my mom. Kevin's heart clenched. Sophie, honey, Laura is your mom. Laura left. She doesn't call. She doesn't visit. She forgot my birthday last year. Sophie's voice was matter-of-fact, not sad, just stating facts. Lillian comes to my school plays. She helps me with homework. She taught me how to braid hair. She's more like a mom than Laura ever was. So why can't she be my actual mom? Because that's up to Lillian and me, and it's complicated. Adults always say things are complicated when they're scared. She wasn't wrong. Kevin was terrified. Terrified of loving someone who might leave. Terrified of letting Sophie get attached to someone who might not stay. Terrified of ruining the best friendship he'd had in years by admitting he wanted more. But he was also tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of leaving Lillian's house every night when he wanted to stay. Tired of watching her laugh and not being able to kiss her. Tired of being afraid. Okay, Kevin said. I'll tell her. But Sophie, you have to understand, even if I tell Lillian I love her, she might not feel the same way. And if that happens, we'll be okay. We'll still be friends with her. Nothing will change. Everything will change, Sophie said wisely, because she'll know, and knowing is better than guessing. Kevin thought about it all night. Couldn't sleep. Finally, at 2 a.m. he texted Lillian. Can we talk? Tomorrow? Just us? She responded immediately. Yes. My place? I'll send Sophie home with my assistant for a play date. The next evening, Kevin sat in Lillian's living room, more nervous than he'd been in years. He'd rehearsed what he wanted to say, practiced in the mirror, written notes he didn't bring. None of it helped. His hands were shaking. What did you want to talk about? Lillian asked. She looked concerned. You sounded serious in your text. Is everything okay? Is Sophie okay? Sophie's fine. This is about us. Us? Kevin took a deep breath. I have to tell you something, and it might ruin everything, but I can't keep pretending. I can't keep showing up here and leaving every night when all I want to do is stay. I can't keep watching you laugh and not being able to tell you how I feel. I can't keep lying to myself that we're just friends when I want so much more than that. Kevin, please let me finish, because if I don't say this now, I never will. He looked at her, really looked at her. at the woman who'd become the center of his world without him realizing it. "I'm in love with you, Lillian. I'm completely, terrifyingly in love with you." Silence. Lillian stared at him, her face unreadable. Kevin rushed on, panic rising. "I know I'm just a janitor. I know you're a millionaire CEO, and I live in a tiny apartment with second-hand furniture and a car that breaks down twice a month. I know you could have anyone, someone successful, someone who matches your lifestyle, someone who isn't working 2 jobs just to make rent. But I'm in love with you, have been for months. Maybe since that first dinner with Sophie. Maybe since that day in the church. I don't know when it started, but I know it's real. And I need you to know that before I lose my nerve." More silence. Then, "You're in love with me?" "Yes." "Why?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean, why? Why are you in love with me? Is it pity? Because of the wheelchair? Because you feel sorry for the disabled woman who got left at the altar? Are you trying to rescue me? Fix me? Is this some kind of, I don't know, savior complex?" "What? No. God, no." Kevin moved to sit beside her. "Lillian, I love you because you're brilliant and funny, and you make Sophie light up when you walk into a room. I love you because you called me out when I was wrong about that app design and didn't care that it embarrassed me in front of your team. I love you because you spend your weekends advocating for disability rights when you could be doing anything else. I love you because you see people, really see them, and you care. You made my daughter feel valued and heard from the first moment you met her. You've made me believe that my perspective matters, that I have something to offer beyond mopping floors." He took her hands. They were shaking. "The wheelchair is part of you. It's not something I love despite. It's not something I'm overlooking or seeing past. It's part of who you are, and I love all of you, every part. The brilliant CEO and the woman who cries during sad movies. The disability advocate and the person who gets frustrated when coffee shops don't have accessible entrances. The strong woman who cancelled her own wedding with her head held high, and the vulnerable person who eats takeout alone in a mansion. I love all of it, all of you." Lillian was crying. "I'm scared. Everyone leaves, Kevin. Everyone. My parents died. Marcus left. Every relationship I've ever had ended because I was too much trouble, too complicated, too much work. Why would you be different? Why wouldn't you wake up one day and realize that loving someone in a wheelchair is hard, that accessibility is annoying, that you could have someone easier?" "Because I already know it's hard," Kevin said. "I've seen the challenges. I've watched you struggle with buildings that aren't accessible. I've seen people stare. I've seen the way some people talk to you like you're less capable because you're sitting down. I've seen all of it, and I'm still here, still choosing you, still wanting you. But what if it gets harder? What if we face more challenges? What if... Then we'll face them together." Kevin squeezed her hands. "Lillian, my wife left me when Sophie was 3, left our daughter alone in an apartment for 6 hours while she packed her bags and drove away. I know what it's like when someone decides you're too much trouble. I know what it feels like to be abandoned. And I'm telling you, I'm promising you, that's not me. I'm not going anywhere." "How can you promise that?" "Because I already know your trouble," Kevin said, making her laugh through her tears. "I've seen you at your worst. I pushed your wheelchair down the aisle when you cancelled your wedding. I've seen you frustrated when designs don't work. I've seen you cry over accessibility failures. I've seen you angry and sad and vulnerable and strong. I know exactly who you are, Lillian Parker. All of it, and I'm not going anywhere. I don't want to go anywhere. Promise?" "I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen. Life is messy. We'll have hard days. We'll fight. We'll face challenges. But I can promise I'll show up. Every day. For you and with you. Wheelchair and all. In good days and bad days. When things are easy and when they're hard, I'll be there." Lillian wheeled closer, took his face in her hands, searched his eyes for any hint of doubt or pity or obligation. Found none. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have for months. Maybe since you pushed my wheelchair down that aisle. Maybe since you told me I wasn't a burden. Maybe since I watched you be gentle with Sophie and realized what a good father you are. I was too scared to say it. Scared you'd realize you could do better than a disabled woman. Scared you were only here out of kindness. Scared that if I let myself love you, you'd leave like everyone else. I'm not everyone else. I know. That's what scares me. Because if I love you and you leave, it'll destroy me. Marcus leaving hurt, but losing you would be unbearable. Then it's a good thing I'm not leaving. You're here because I can't imagine being anywhere else." They kissed, soft at first, tentative, like they were both afraid it might not be real. Then deeper. Lillian's hands in his hair. Kevin's arms around her, both of them crying, both of them laughing, both of them terrified and brave and falling into something real. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Lillian was smiling. "What do we tell Sophie?" "Sophie already knows. She figured it out before I did. Actually, she's the one who told me to tell you." "Smart kid." "Gets it from me," Kevin joked. "Gets it from you? I'm the CEO here." "Yeah, but I'm the one who taught her how to ride a bike." "I could teach her to ride a bike." "You absolutely could. You could do anything." Kevin kissed her again. "That's one of the many reasons I love you." They sat there in her living room for hours, talking, kissing, planning, making promises, building a future together that neither of them had thought possible. They dated for 2 years, slow and steady, building a life together. The first year was adjustment, learning each other's rhythms. Kevin learning to navigate Lillian's world of business dinners and charity galas. Lillian learning to navigate Kevin's world of firehouse barbecues and parent-teacher conferences. Both of them learning to be a couple after years of being alone. They had their first fight 3 months in. Kevin had planned a romantic surprise dinner at a new restaurant. Didn't think to check if it was wheelchair accessible. It wasn't. Lillian had to wait outside while Kevin went in to cancel the reservation, mortified and apologetic. "I'm sorry. I should have checked. I wasn't thinking." "It's fine." But Lillian's voice was tight, angry. "It's not fine. I messed up. Kevin, I've been dealing with inaccessible places my entire adult life. I'm used to it. But you shouldn't have to be, especially not with me. I should know better." They sat in the car, silent, angry, hurt. Finally Lillian said, "I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the world for being like this, for making every outing a gamble on whether I'll even be able to get through the door. And I'm mad at myself for being mad because I know you meant well." "You're allowed to be mad. At me, at the world, at all of it. I don't want to be the angry, disabled girlfriend." "You're not. You're my girlfriend who has every right to be angry when people don't consider accessibility, including me." They worked through it. Kevin started checking accessibility for everywhere they went. Lillian learned to tell him when she was frustrated instead of bottling it up. They learned to communicate, to fight fair, to apologize and mean it. Sophie adapted to having Lillian in their lives with the ease of children. Started calling her Lil instead of Lillian. Would climb into Lillian's wheelchair for rides around the mansion. Asked questions about disability with complete honesty that made Kevin wince, but Lillian appreciated. "Why can't you feel your legs?" "Because my spine was hurt in an accident. The nerves that send messages from my brain to my legs don't work anymore." "Does it hurt?" "Sometimes. I get phantom pains. My brain thinks my legs should hurt even though I can't feel them most of the time. It's weird." "Can doctors fix it?" "No. Some spinal cord injuries can be helped. Mine can't. It's permanent." "That sucks." "Yeah, Sophie, it does suck. But it's also just my life now. I've gotten used to it." Sophie accepted this with a nod and moved on. No pity, no awkwardness, just facts absorbed, and life continued. Kevin wished more adults could be like that. After a year, Kevin and Sophie moved into Lillian's mansion. Kevin still felt weird about it, living in a house worth millions when he was used to a cramped apartment, but Sophie loved it. Loved having her own huge bedroom, loved the pool, loved having Lillian there every morning for breakfast instead of just sometimes. "Is this weird?" Kevin asked Lillian one night. "Me living here? In your parents' house?" "It was my parents' house. Now it's our house. Yours, mine, Sophie's. We're making it ours." Lillian squeezed his hand. "Besides, this place has felt empty for years. Now it feels like a home." They blended their lives. Kevin taught Lillian how to make pancakes, badly, but with love. Lillian taught Sophie about business and technology. They became a family unit, the three of them, different from traditional families, but family nonetheless. Kevin's friends from the firehouse were surprised. "You're dating a millionaire? How does that even work?" "We're just people. She's not some untouchable rich person. She's just Lillian." The Lillian Parker, the Forbes 30 Under 30 Lillian Parker. The woman who cries during Pixar movies and burns toast and makes Sophie laugh. That Lillian Parker. His friends didn't understand at first. The class difference seemed insurmountable. But when they met Lillian, saw how she was with Kevin and Sophie, they got it. This wasn't about money or status. This was about two people who fit together despite their differences. Lillian's business associates were equally confused. "You're dating your janitor consultant." "I'm dating Kevin Thompson, who happens to consult for my company and also clean churches. And he's brilliant and kind and the best thing that's happened to me in years." But doesn't it seem, I don't know, like a significant class difference? Only if you think money determines worth, which I don't. Kevin has more integrity in his pinky finger than most executives I know. Class difference doesn't matter when you love someone. Not everyone understood. Some people made comments. Some people whispered. Some people thought Lillian was slumming it or Kevin was using her for money. But Kevin and Lillian didn't care. They knew what they had, knew it was real. On their third anniversary, 3 years since that conversation in Lillian's living room, when they finally admitted their feelings, Kevin proposed. He planned it carefully. Took Lillian and Sophie to the beach on a Saturday afternoon. The beach had accessible pathways down to the sand. Kevin had checked 3 times to make sure, had scouted the location, had talked to Sophie about what he was going to do. They spread a blanket on the sand, ate sandwiches, watched the waves. Sophie built sand castles while Lillian and Kevin sat close, her wheelchair parked beside their blanket. "This is perfect," Lillian said. "Just this. The 3 of us. The ocean. No pressure. No expectations. Just being together." Kevin took a deep breath. Sophie gave him an encouraging nod. "Lillian, I need to ask you something." She looked at him, saw something in his expression. "Okay?" Kevin got down on one knee in the sand, which was harder than it looked, sand shifting under his weight. He pulled out a small box, opened it to reveal a simple diamond ring. Nothing ostentatious, nothing expensive by Lillian standards, but chosen carefully, with love. "Lillian Parker, 3 years ago I told you I loved you, that I'd show up for you every single day. I've tried to keep that promise, even on hard days, even when things weren't perfect. I've shown up, because loving you is the easiest and best thing I've ever done." His voice cracked. "You've made me believe I'm worth more than I thought. You've loved my daughter like she's yours. You've built a family with us, and I want to make it official. Will you marry me?" Lillian was crying. Sophie was cheering. Beachgoers were watching. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes. Kevin slipped the ring on her finger, kissed her while Sophie tackled them both in a hug. They fell back onto the blanket, laughing and crying and completely happy. The wedding was small, 20 people, Father Martinez officiating at the same church where Kevin had pushed Lillian's wheelchair down the aisle 2 years earlier. But this time, she was a bride walking toward her future, not away from her past. Sophie was flower girl, wearing a dress she'd picked herself, bright purple with sparkles, because Sophie had strong opinions about fashion. Sarah, Lillian's assistant, was maid of honor. Kevin's best friend from the firehouse was best man. It was simple, intimate. No 300 guests. No designer dress worth thousands. Lillian wore a beautiful but simple white dress. Kevin wore a suit he'd bought for the occasion. First suit he'd ever owned that wasn't second-hand. They wrote their own vows. Lillian went first. Kevin, you saw me at my absolute worst, crying in a wedding dress, broken, humiliated, and you didn't see someone to pity. You saw someone worth helping, worth knowing, worth loving. You've spent 3 years showing me that my worth isn't determined by whether I can walk. That disability doesn't make me less deserving of love. You've loved me on good days and hard days, when I'm strong and when I'm vulnerable, when I'm the confident CEO and when I'm the scared woman who's terrified of being abandoned. You've stayed, you've shown up, you've proven that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other every single day. I choose you, today, tomorrow, forever. Kevin's hands were shaking as he read his vows. Lillian, I'm not good with words, but I'll try. You've changed my life in ways I didn't know were possible. You've made me believe that I have value beyond what I do for work, that my perspective matters, that my love matters. You've loved my daughter like she's yours. You've built a family with us when I thought we'd just be Sophie and me forever. You've shown me that love isn't about money or status or what society says should work. It's about finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and chooses you anyway. I see you, all of you, and I choose you, every day, in your wheelchair and out of it, in our mansion and anywhere else, through challenges and triumphs. I choose you. Father Martinez pronounced them married. Kevin lifted Lillian from her wheelchair. They'd practiced this, wanted this moment, and kissed her while everyone cheered. When he set her back down, she whispered, "You know I can wheel myself, right?" "I know, but I've been dreaming of this moment for 3 years. Let me have it." She laughed and kissed him and let him carry her down the aisle while everyone cheered and Sophie threw flower petals, and nothing had ever felt more right. 5 years later, they sat in their backyard watching Sophie, now 13, swim in the pool with her friends. The summer sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Sophie was laughing with her friends, completely at ease, completely happy. "I never thought I'd have this," Lillian said quietly. "A husband, a daughter, a family. After the accident, I thought that part of my life was over. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life alone in my parents' house, running the company, doing advocacy work, but never having this, never having someone to come home to, never having a kid call me Mom." Kevin reached for her hand, squeezed it. "You deserve all of it. I got lucky. You saw past the wheelchair when everyone else couldn't. I didn't see past it. I saw you, all of you. The wheelchair's part of you, part of what makes you who you are, part of your story, part of your strength. I never saw past it. I saw it, and I saw you, and I loved all of it." Lillian turned to look at him. This man who'd changed everything, who'd shown up in a church basement and stayed, who'd pushed her wheelchair down an aisle and never let go, who'd proven that love wasn't about perfection or status or able bodies. Love was about choosing someone every single day in all their complexity and beauty and challenges. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, "choosing this life?" Me? The complications? Never, not once. Kevin's voice was firm, certain. Lillian, you gave me a life I didn't know was possible. Before you, I was barely surviving, working 2 jobs, exhausted, broke, convinced I'd never trust anyone enough to love them. You showed me that I had value beyond what I could do, that my perspective mattered, that I was worth loving. You gave Sophie a mother who actually shows up, who loves her, who's building a future with us. How could I regret any of that? Even when restaurants aren't accessible and we have to change plans. Even then, those are system problems, not us problems. The world should be more accessible. That's not on you. Even when people stare at us in public because they think we're an odd couple. Especially then, because their narrow view of what relationships should look like isn't my problem. I know what we have. You know what we have. That's all that matters. Lillian kissed him, soft and sweet, and full of 5 years of love and trust and choosing each other. Sophie ran over, dripping wet, flanked by 2 of her friends. "Dad, can we order pizza? We're starving." "Sure, sweetheart. What does everyone want?" While Kevin took orders from the gaggle of 13-year-olds, Lillian watched. Her family, her home, her life, so different from what she'd imagined when she was 21 and able-bodied, and thought she knew how her future would unfold. That future had died in a car accident. But this future, this beautiful, complicated, unexpected future, was better than anything she could have planned. Marcus Wellington had called her a burden, had walked away because he couldn't handle being married to someone in a wheelchair. At the time, it had destroyed her, made her question her worth, made her wonder if she'd ever be loved. But Marcus walking away had led to Kevin showing up. And Kevin, kind, steady, sees all of her Kevin, had shown her what real love looked like. Love that didn't see disability as something to overcome. Love that didn't treat her wheelchair as an obstacle. Love that saw all of her and chose all of her. Parker Technologies had tripled in value in the 5 years since Lillian married Kevin. Her accessibility initiatives had won awards. Her company had become the industry leader in inclusive design. All because Kevin had pushed her to center real people's experiences instead of just designing in conference rooms. Kevin had quit his janitor job 2 years ago. Now he worked full-time as Director of Accessibility Consulting at Parker Technologies. Made a good salary, had benefits, got to do work that mattered. Still showed up at the firehouse, though. Couldn't give up being a firefighter. Said it was part of who he was. Lillian understood that. Everyone had parts of themselves they couldn't let go. For Kevin, it was firefighting. For Lillian, it was her parents' house. For Sophie, it was her stuffed elephant from when she was a baby. They were a family built from broken pieces. Kevin's broken marriage, Lillian's broken spine, Sophie's absent mother. All of them carrying wounds and scars and grief. But they'd built something beautiful anyway. Built a home, built trust, built love. "Thank you," Lillian said when Kevin came back from ordering pizza. "For pushing my wheelchair that day. For showing up when you didn't have to. For staying when everyone else left. For loving me when I didn't think I was lovable. Best decision I ever made." Kevin kissed the top of her head. "You know what Sophie told me last week?" "What?" "She said she's glad you use a wheelchair. Said it means we met you. Said if you could walk, you never would have been sitting on that bench crying, and we never would have stopped to help, and we wouldn't be a family." Kevin's voice was thick with emotion. "She said your wheelchair gave her a mum. How do you argue with logic like that?" Lillian started crying. Happy tears, grateful tears. Tears for the 13-year-old girl who saw disability not as tragedy, but as the pathway to family. "I love you," she whispered. I love you, and I love Sophie, and I love this life we built. I love you too, wheelchair and all, forever and all." They sat there as the sun set, as Sophie laughed with her friends, as pizza was ordered, and life continued in its beautiful, mundane, perfect way. Because sometimes the greatest love stories start with the smallest acts of kindness. A janitor pushing a wheelchair, a woman brave enough to accept help. Two people who looked past what society said they should be and built something real. Lillian Parker had been rejected for being disabled, left at the altar by a man who called her a burden, told she was too much trouble, too complicated, not worth the effort of accommodation. But Kevin Thompson, single dad janitor, did the unthinkable. He stayed. He loved her exactly as she was. He showed her that disability didn't make her unworthy of love. It just meant she deserved someone better. Someone who saw her wheelchair not as an obstacle, but as part of her story, part of her strength, part of who she was. And Kevin, working 2 jobs to support his daughter, exhausted and broke and struggling, found that love wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about finding someone easy. It was about showing up, about seeing someone for who they truly were, about choosing them every single day, in wheelchairs and out of them, in mansions and tiny apartments, in sickness and health, in challenges and triumphs. They built a beautiful life, together, in a wheelchair and out of one, proving that love wasn't about walking down aisles. It was about wheeling through life side by side, partners, equals, perfectly imperfect. The millionaire bride who was rejected found her happy ending with the janitor who saw her worth when nobody else did. The woman who thought disability made her unlovable discovered that she'd just been looking for love in the wrong places, with the wrong people. People who saw wheelchairs before they saw humans. And the single dad who was just trying to survive found love with a woman who valued kindness over status, who saw his worth not in his paycheck but in his character, who loved him not despite his struggles but because of how he'd risen above them. Sometimes the fairy tale doesn't look like you expected. Sometimes Prince Charming is a tired janitor in a worn uniform who mops church floors to make ends meet. Sometimes the princess is in a wheelchair, running a tech empire and fighting for accessibility rights. Sometimes the castle is a mansion that used to feel empty but now feels like home because it's filled with love and laughter and family. But the love is just as real, the happy ending just as sweet. Maybe sweeter because it was hard-won, because it required both of them to be brave, to be vulnerable, to trust again after being hurt, to build something new from their broken pieces. Kevin and Lillian proved that every day, together, showing Sophie and the world that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up. It's about choosing each other. It's about building a life that honors all of who you are, disabilities included, and finding someone who loves every part of that. They proved that disability doesn't make you unworthy of love. It just makes you worthy of better love, real love, the kind that sees you and stays, the kind that shows up, the kind that pushes your wheelchair down an aisle and never lets go. And that's exactly what they had. Real, lasting, beautiful love, built on kindness, strengthened by adversity, proven by 5 years of choosing each other every single day, the best kind of love there is.